Okay, dear colleagues, my name is adress. I'm a member of the Norwegian delegation here in the OSCE, and I am a member of the Parliament in Norway, where I represent the Norwegian Labour Party. I am very glad to see so many that have come here to be a part of this side event to discuss this very interesting issue of human rights and whether targeted sanctions could be a tool against big violations. We have a very interesting panel here of three panelists. They will read their introduction, and then after that will be time for questions and remarks from all of you. I am hosting this side event, and I'm doing it together with the Norwegian Helsinki Committee. And my work here is pretty easy because I give the word to Bjørn Engesland, who is the Secretary General of the Norwegian Helsinki Committee, and will chair this meeting and lead the discussion further on. So once again, welcome everybody, and Bjørn,
thank you very much. We are very pleased to have the support of Norwegian parliamentarians organizing this event. And I'm very pleased that Osman Aukrust, a member of the Norwegian Parliament, is the host, formally speaking, for this side event. My name is Bjørn Engesland, Secretary General of the Norwegian Helsinki Committee. We are equally pleased seeing how that so many of you are taking time to be with us for approximately 1 hour and 10 minutes. We have an excellent panel. I will soon introduce them. But before I do that, I have the honor to introduce the President of the Parliamentary Assembly of the OSCE, George Cheseretelli. Sorry for my pronunciation. You will make a very short comment.
Thank you very much. Welcome, and it's my pleasure to see a very important let's say, representation at this meeting. So you all understand that the winter meeting is very much packed, a lot of different events, and I'm happy that we included in our agenda this initiative from Norwegian delegation, and thankful to host and all the delegation. Then of course to have prominent experts and Norwegian Helsinki Group or Helsinki Commission, which is one of the most credible organizations, as I know, in Norway and of course in Europe. So we try to pay a lot of attention to our human dimension that we see, special committee, and try to be very active with all our needs, and always, let's say, to flag up important issues. And in this regard, why I took this floor, because we're working on a particular issue, at least to decide intervention from the Parliamentary Assembly. Last year, American Helsinki Commission, which is very good ally for us and a great organization, congressional also organization which works closely with the Parliamentary Assembly, organized the margins of our Berlin annual session, special event dedicated to the Boris Nemtsov's assassination. And we heard, of course, this very painful story and developments of the investigation. And my good friend and Vladimir Karamurza, and also lawyer Vadim, and family members, they also been there. And we committed ourselves also to intervene. I'd like to mention a special role of a few people, also Senator Roger Wicker, Ben Harding, also the members, you can remember that other was there, Richard Hudson, and many of you also contributed. They contributed also back in the United States, paying tribute to Boris Nemtsov as a political leader, and of course to follow what's happening in this investigation and scrutiny and how it's done at this moment. Because it's not the case, we shouldn't neglect it. It's another. Every death is, of course, a great loss, but it's not a street crime, and it's not a street killing. It's an assassination of a political leader, one of the well-known leaders in Russia. So I will conclude now. And since that, when I, as a president, promised that we'll take action, that action envisaged to have a special report on Nemtsov's case. And it was not easy to find the person who will take this task, because it needs time, it needs travel, sometimes it's travel also to Russia, many people are banned in our assembly, unfortunately. But we're now quite happy that Vice President Margareta Cederfelt for Sweden, she agreed to follow with this issue and to submit this report, which will be hopefully, the first part at least, will be presented in Luxembourg during our annual session. So that was my announcement, and let's see, we will follow this process, and from our secretariat, from leadership of the Parliamentary Assembly, we'll try to assist as much as we can. So thank you again for your good initiative, and I think it will be a very interesting discussion tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, and thank you for being with us. The Norwegian Helsinki Committee has engaged in lobbying for targeted human rights sanctions during the last 5 to 6 years. We have organized seminars, hearings in Oslo. We have taken part in international lobbying efforts with the Global Magnitsky campaign, challenging the European Union and democratic states to establish targeted human rights sanctions. The title of this side event is Targeted Sanctions as Tools to Address Gross Violations of Human Rights. In order to discuss this, we have invited a panel of 3 persons. That is, on my right side here, Ruta Miljote, head of the Lithuanian delegation to the OSCE, and at home, Vice Chair of the European Affairs Committee in the Lithuanian Parliament. We have Vladimir Karamurza, sitting here, Vice Chairman of the Open Russia Movement, and previously a Russian opposition politician. Currently, sorry about that, and to my left, Gunnar Ekelöve Slydal, Deputy Secretary General of the Norwegian Helsinki Committee. I know that some of you have to leave relatively early, even before 1 o'clock. We have asked the panelists to speak 5 to 7 minutes each, in order to have time for you to make your comments and ask your questions. In any case, we will have to end the session no later than 1:30. And by that, I give the floor to Ruta Miljote, and after you, thanks.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. dear colleagues and friends. First of all, thank you for the organizers for having me here and for inviting me to share experiences with regard to human rights sanctions in Lithuania. Some of you may have heard that Lithuania was the fourth country in the world after the United States, Canada, and Estonia to adopt the Magnitsky Act, banning entry to foreigners linked to large-scale corruption, money laundering, and human rights violations in their own countries. The previous law that was in power in Lithuania had prohibited people who posed a threat to national security or public order from entering Lithuania. But the new legislation, the current version, defines the prohibition of foreigners to come to Lithuania who will threaten to security or public order also of another EU or NATO country. Most important part of the law says that the prohibition is valid if there is information or a serious ground for suspecting that the foreigner has committed, participated, or otherwise contributed to large-scale corruption or money laundering or to human rights violations leading the person to die, to suffer serious injury, or if he was unjustly convicted for political reasons or had other serious negative consequences. It is important to stress that the amendment of law was not directed against any country in particular. On the contrary, the provisions it establishes are universal. Nevertheless, after adopting the law in the Parliament of Lithuania, there were strong reactions from our neighbor from the east. Russian ambassador in Lithuania was saying that Russia would ban many Lithuanian citizens from entering Russia in response to the legislation. Elena Panina, a member of Russia's ruling United Russia Party, said that in this way Lithuania is seeking for attention and that the US influence over Lithuania would degrade the country, sparking immigration of young people, suggesting that the Lithuanians do not agree with the politics of the government. I can assure that, having in mind that the vote in the Parliament of Lithuania was unanimous for the law amendment, and also the society does support these sanctions. Another response was Russia's Foreign Affairs Ministry, which announced a list of Lithuanian citizens banned on entering Russia. It includes local politicians, parliamentarians, and political scientists, as well as 2 members of our delegation to the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly, Mr. Bankas and Krishnanas. Both of them are members of the National Security Committees back at home. So, in January 2017, a list of 49 people banned to enter Lithuania was announced, which also had some reactions. For example, the decision to include Chechen leader Ruslan Kadyrov was commented that Mr. Kadyrov was never even considering to come to Lithuania, and he even doesn't care about his being banned. Later, 21 people were added to the list in solidarity with Great Britain, and its Parliament whose daughter was poisoned. Last December, Lithuania also included 17 Saudi Arabian officials associated with the murder of the journalist Yamal Khashoggi. All in all, Lithuania strongly supports initiatives aimed to strengthen multilateral and national preventive and response tools in the wake of increasing human rights violations and shrinking civil society space. Unfortunately, we can see that traditional diplomatic toolbox is not effective anymore in dealing with human rights abuses in authoritarian countries, which are implementing and promoting policy of impunity. Authoritarian countries are either bluntly denying evidence provided by human rights organizations or other countries. For example, we witness in Chechnya with massive persecution of LGBTI persons, or conducting fake investigations, for example, investigation of the Khashoggi murder or persons of information. From our part, as I was saying before, Lithuania is developing our national legal framework based on the Magnitsky Act, upon which we have already listed several residents in our national sanction list for those human rights violations in third countries. But there are also discussions and suggestions to include financial and economical sanctions, so that the foreigners linked with crime would not only be banned from entering the country, but also banned from the money or other financial assets in banks operating in Lithuania, as well as to carry out economic activities of legal entities operating in Lithuania and receive income from it. In principle, we are supportive of the establishment of the EU global human rights sanctions regime in complementary to the existing EU sanction toolbox, which unfortunately currently is limited in scope. To conclude, we need tools not only to address human rights violations during complex and general crisis or massive scale human rights violation, but also to be equipped with measures and toolkits which would allow to increase pressure to countries where the level of impunity is high, especially when minorities, human rights defenders, political activists, journalists, and so on are targeted. And also where justice system is an integral part of the authoritarian regime.
Thank you very much. I move on to Vladimir Karamusa. The floor is yours, please.
Well, thank you so much, and I want to first of all thank the Norwegian Helsinki Committee and Norwegian Member of Parliament Rasmus for hosting us here at this very, very important discussion at the week's meeting of the Parliamentary Assembly. It is an honour to be here with so many friends this afternoon. And before I speak on the main subject of our event, the targeted sanctions as a tool to address human rights in the OSCE area, I want to say a few words on the announcement that President Sereteli has just made, because I think, frankly, the importance of it cannot be overestimated. This coming Wednesday will mark 4 years since that day, or I should say that night, when the most prominent, the most senior, the most high-profile political opposition leader in Russia, former Deputy Prime Minister Boris Nemtsov, was gunned down by 5 bullets in the back, 200 yards from the Kremlin Wall in Moscow. 4 years on, the organizers and the masterminds of this political assassination remain unidentified and at large. The Russian authorities are not even pretending to look for them. No indictments have been issued against either the organizers or the masterminds, with the exception of one Chechen driver, which looks more like an expression of ridicule. It is very clear that they're refusing to even talk about the motive. They very specifically, the Russian authorities very specifically chose an incorrect article of the criminal code to classify the assassination of Boris Nemtsov, not under the clause that deals with encroachment on the life of political and public figures, but under the article for common domestic murders. And this was a very pointed gesture on their part. As one of the state prosecutors in Russia has said, we cannot allow to classify the murders of opposition members as encroachment on the life of statesmen and public figures, because of course they don't consider us in the opposition to be political figures. For them, they're all enemies and traitors. And I'm not even talking about the most specific aspects of this case, such as the refusal to hand over the cameras from the security footage from the bridge of the night of the murder, one is one of the most guarded areas anywhere in Russia and probably anywhere in all of Europe. The pointed refusal to ask, or to allow to ask any questions relating to political motives behind the assassination. The refusal to question very obvious persons of interest, despite repeated requests by the attorneys of the Nemtsov family. And then, after all of this, the top law enforcement official in Russia, General Alexander Strikin, the chairman of the investigative committee, said in an interview with the main government newspaper that this case has been solved. Only the lowest perpetrators have been arrested and sentenced. No organizers, no masterminds, no motive. As far as they're concerned, the case is solved. What they want to do now is turn the page, forget, and move on. Well, we're not going to let them do that, with your help and support. Thankfully, Russia does not exist in a vacuum. Russia is a member of the Council of Europe and of this venerable organization, the OSCE, the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. And with your help and support, we're going to make sure that the Russian government is not allowed to get away with covering up for the most high-profile political assassination in a century. And so 2 years ago, the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe has launched its own procedure preparing a special report on the Nemtsov case to keep the Russian government to account. The Russian government responded by blacklisting the special rapporteur of the Council of Europe from even going to the country, which I think, again, was probably the clearest possible message on that one. He's actually another Parliament in Lithuania, another Zingers. And then exactly a year ago, the United States Helsinki Commission, under the leadership then of Senator Roger Wicker, who's here with us this afternoon, held the first initial hearing on Capitol Hill in Washington on the need to involve the OSCE in the oversight process in the case of Boris Nemtsov. And then, as President Sereteli has just mentioned, last summer in Berlin, at the 27th annual session of the Assembly, at the Reichstag building, there was a side event, also hosted by the US delegation, Senator Wicker and Congressman Smith, at which, with the participation of President Sereteli, we discussed in more detail the need to involve the OSCE in this oversight process. And so it is with the most profound gratitude that we greet today's announcement by President Sereteli that the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly Vice President Margareta Sederfeld has been appointed as a rapporteur for the Nemtsov case here at the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly. I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone who has been involved in making sure that this will become possible, but most of all, President George Tartaglia, the leaders of the US delegation, most of all Senator Roger Wicker, who led both the hearing in Washington last year and the side event in Berlin in July. I want to thank the deputy head of the Lithuanian delegation, Laurynas Kasčiūnas, who led the effort in actually leading a request at the autumn session in Bishkek to President Sarateli requesting that the rapporteur be appointed. He couldn't join us this afternoon because he's off to an election observation mission in Moldova. And so many, absolutely, and so many other members, including heads of delegations, including Congressman Smith, Mark Pritchard of the United Kingdom, Barbara Bartos of Poland, members from Canada, the Baltic states, and so many others. Yes, thank you to everybody who was involved. there are no words to express how important this is to us, given the very clear and very pointed refusal of the Russian government to seek justice and accountability in this case, for reasons that I think are only too obvious to everybody present here. The only recourse we have is international oversight. Unfortunately, there's nothing that can fully replace a national investigation, which will only be possible when things change in Russia, and I know that day will come. But until that day comes, and until all of those people are held to account for what they have done and are brought to justice, we are so deeply grateful to our partners and friends in international organizations, including now here at the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, for not allowing people to forget, and for helping to bring us closer to that day when all of those who are involved in this assassination are finally brought to justice. So thank you so very much for making this possible. And I now want to address the main subject of our meeting, which is the status of Magnitsky sanctions in the OSCE area. It's now been almost 7 years since the 21st annual session of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly in Monaco in 2012 overwhelmingly adopted a resolution that called on OSCE member states to enact targeted visa bans and asset freezes against Russian officials involved in the case of Sergei Magnitsky and also in other gross human rights abuses. Presenting that resolution at the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly session, US Senator John McCain said that some people will try to paint that resolution as anti-Russian. But in fact, he said nothing could be further from the truth. Because defending the rule of law is pro-Russian. Seeking to protect the innocent and punish the guilty is pro-Russian. And notions such as justice, integrity, and the legal way to target corruption is also pro-Russian. When this resolution was passed in 2012, in the summer of 2012, not a single OSCE country, or in fact not a single country in the world, had legislation providing for targeted sanctions against corrupt officials and human rights abusers. I remember so well how those of us who were involved in that campaign at the time, in the campaign to get this legislation passed, were told repeatedly that this is never going to happen, that we're never going to succeed. We were dismissed as hopeless idealists. We were told that the forces of realpolitik and the so-called pragmatists and the special interests would be too powerful. But the champions of the Magnitsky legislation proved all of those people wrong. And they showed that there is still, despite the cynicism of our politics today, they showed that there is still room for principle and values in politics, and defending the rule of law still has meaning, and that Western democracies are still ready to practice what they preach and to stand on their values. And so just a few months after that OSCE Parliamentary Assembly resolution, to be more precise, on the 16th of November of 2012, the third anniversary of the murder of Sergei Magnitsky in a Moscow prison, Boris Nemtsov, the Russian opposition leader, and I were sitting in the visitors' gallery in the US House of Representatives, watching in front of our eyes as this bill was becoming law, passed with nearly 90% support in the US House of Representatives. And I should add that Boris Nemtsov himself played an absolutely instrumental role in helping to convince members of the US Congress, some of whom were skeptical at the beginning, to get this law passed. And Senator McCain, in fact, is publicly on the record saying that there would not have been a Magnitsky Act in the US without Boris Nemtsov, in a profoundly powerful statement from the United States Senate. And I also want to take this opportunity to acknowledge the people who are in this room with us today, who were absolutely indispensable to getting that legislation passed. Senator Roger Wicker was one of the 4 original co-sponsors of the Magnitsky bill back in 2010, and again when it was reintroduced in 2011. And then Kyle Parker, whom I cannot see, but my nose in this room with us here now. Thank you, Alex, for helpfully pointing me his way. The Chief of Staff of the United States Helsinki Commission, Back then, there was the lead staffer on Russia of the US Helsinki Commission, and he's the person who actually wrote the Magnitsky Bill with his own pen, probably with his own computer, to be more accurate, but this is the person who wrote the bill, and he's with us in the room today. As we sat there with Boris Nemtsov in that gallery and watched the House, the US House of Representatives watching the bill, voting the bill, and when that magic number came on the screen and it became clear that the law was passed, Boris Nemtsov turned to me and said, and I'll never forget what he said to me then. He said, he made a statement that was even stronger than what Simon came in the OSCE meeting earlier that year. He said, this law is the most pro-Russian law ever passed in any foreign country, because it targets the people who abuse the rights of Russian citizens and who steal the money of Russian taxpayers. When we say out now, especially now today, after several countries have passed this legislation, it seems such an obvious principle that it shouldn't even need repeating, let alone explaining. The principle that the people who undermine and abuse and attack the most basic norms of democracy and the rule of law in their own country should not be allowed to enjoy the privileges and the opportunities afforded by these same norms of democracy and rule of law in the West. It sounds absolutely obvious. And yet it was astonishing how powerful was the resistance that we encountered and the champions of this legislation encountered on the way to its passage. Because for every corrupt official or oligarch or human rights abuser in the Kremlin, there is an enabler in the West. It has been said that the largest export from the Putin regime to the West has been corruption. And I think that statement is absolutely true. But there's one clarification to that. Because for somebody to be able to export corruption, someone else must be willing to import it. And there hasn't been a shortage of those enablers in the West who are all too willing to roll out a red carpet for these people, for these crooks and human rights abusers. And so the people who are in charge of our country, of Russia today, for the last 2 decades, have made a habit over the years of stealing in Russia, but spending in the West. Because it's in the West where they keep their own money, part of their families, buy their real estate, and so on and so on. For so many years, they were allowed to do that, until the Magnitsky Act came about. And so, today, as of 2019, 6 OSCE member states have passed their own versions of the Magnitsky legislation. Legislation that lays down a very simple principle, that those foreign government officials, not just in Russia, anywhere in the world, those foreign government officials who engage in corruption and human rights abuses in their own home countries will no longer be allowed to receive visas to the West, or assets in the West, or use the financial and banking system of the West. Those countries are the United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, Lithuania, Estonia, and Latvia. And these countries haven't just passed this legislation, they are actively implementing it, without regard for right or influence. And there are some very senior, high-profile human rights abusers from the closest friends to the Kremlin and Putin regime that have been sanctioned by this legislation in countries across the world. Some of the most prominent examples, somebody already mentioned today, General Alexander Street, the top law enforcement official in Putin's government, head of the investigation committee, who was not only responsible for politically motivated prosecutions of the recent years, who is not only responsible for the cover-up in the assassination of Boris Nemtsov, but also once personally took a journalist to a forest and threatened to kill him. And by the way, admitted it later. This is not a question of allegedly or admittedly. This person was sanctioned in the US under the Magnitsky Act, as he was in Canada. These sanctioned individuals now include Ramzan Kadyrov, the Kremlin-appointed head of the Chechen Republic, whose litany of gross human rights abuses beggars belief even by the very poor standards of the Putin regime in general. They include Oleg Deripaska, one of the most senior Kremlin-connected oligarchs, General Viktor Zolotov, one of the closest people to Vladimir Putin, head of the Russian National Guard. They include Artem Chayka, the oldest son of current Russian Prosecutor General Yuri Chayka. And they also include, as Ruta has just mentioned, Lithuania last year became the first country of the 6 that had the Magnitsky law in books to explicitly sanction the people who are known to have been involved in the assassination of Boris Nemtsov, top to bottom, everybody. Lithuania is the only one for now. I hope other countries follow. And so, we are profoundly grateful to those 6 countries for leading the way in ending the impunity for human rights abusers and for showing us that they are ready not just to preach the values of democracy and the rule of law, but actually stand up for protecting them. But at the same time, we must acknowledge that this is just a drop in the ocean. The OSCE has 57 member states. 48 of them are democracies. Only 6 have humanitarian laws on the books. So there is much, much work to be done. Last month, the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe adopted a report co-authored by Ron Atkinson, former chairman of the British Parliament's Foreign Affairs Select Committee, calling for more Council of Europe member states to adopt this legislation. Just yesterday, there was a hearing of the European Parliament's Human Rights Subcommittee in Brussels on the need for an EU-wide individual human rights sanctions regime. And there are many similar initiatives in national parliaments across the world, and this discussion has been held several times in the Parliament of Norway and also today we have the Helsinki Committee. And friends of mine who are sitting on my right have been instrumental in helping us move that discussion forward in Norway. Many other countries, Denmark, France, the Netherlands. But there is much work to be done. And so I'm very grateful for the opportunity to speak here today. And I want to take this opportunity not just to thank those OSCE member states who are already leading in ending impunity for corrupt crooks and human rights abusers, but also to express my hope that more countries, more OSCE member states, more of the world's democracies take that principled stand, pass this legislation, and send a very clear message to the crooks and the human rights abusers that they will no longer be welcome on Western soil or on Western banks. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak here this afternoon.
Thank you very much, Vladimir, for a very powerful statement. And I'm sorry to put a limit on your speech, because what you are presenting to us is a very important message. The next speaker, the last speaker in the Parliament will be Gunnar Eklund.
Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be here. In the Norwegian Helsinki Committee, we think that parliamentarians has a big role in adopting measures to increase protection of human rights and of human rights defenders, whistleblowers, and investigative journalists, opposition politicians, etc. Just a month ago, we had a breakthrough in Norway, as we see it, because the new coalition government declared that as a new measures to strengthen Norway's human rights policies, they would develop a mechanism of targeted human rights sanctions as part of wider European efforts to sanction gross violations of human rights. So this was the first time we had an official statement that Norway will develop such sanctions. And then I will add that the starting point in the Norwegian Helsinki Committee to become part of a campaigns to have these kind of measures, that was the heartbreaking stories that some of our colleagues, human rights defenders, investigative journalists, whistleblowers in Russia, Central Asia, and in some other OSCE participating states were harassed, threatened, imprisoned, physically assaulted, and even killed. And as a worsening factor, there were limited, if any, efforts to genuinely investigate the cases. Mostly the persons who stood behind all of the attacks were unpunished. So we had constantly discussions, how are we going to deal with this situation, these developments, these problems. Of course, we are supporters of more dialogue with authorities to improve protection at the national level, enacting laws and practices that enable such actors to function effectively and safely. We are also very big supporters of competence building, and I know that OSCE is among the most important actors in that field. Improving policies, document problems and wrongdoing, and propose solutions to important problems in the participating states. We also believe that strengthening the capacity of international organizations, such as this organization, but also the UN and the Council of Europe, are important. We are very appreciative that the OSCE institutions provide support to human rights defenders and have issued guidelines on how to better protect their work. I I also want to mention that Norway and other like-minded countries have succeeded in having very strong resolutions adopted in the UN Human Rights Council and UN General Assembly to have better protections for human rights defenders. There is a new resolution which will be tabled quite soon about protecting environmental human rights defenders. And some of the OSCE participating states are also providing a lot of financial support to human rights defenders, which is also very important and enable them to strengthen their work. In some cases, human rights defenders need protection very directly, and some countries provide that protection, asylum. But going through the list of measures, we realized that in some countries, attacks on human rights defenders and journalists and some politicians will not be stopped by international criticism, resolutions, or other mentioned measures. There were serious human rights violations who were so closely connected to criminal corruption, enormous financial crimes, by economic and political elites, and they will not be stopped simply by criticizing or denouncing them. So we know, grappling with these problems, we identified impunity as a main factor leading to new crimes. In some cases, high-ranking officials could get away even with murder. We saw three possibilities. We could increase support to legal aid at the national level. However, in most states which experience repeated attacks on human rights defenders, courts are either politically controlled or enforcement of their judgments is weak. The Magnitsky case provides a strong illustration of that problem. Secondly, you could bring more cases to the European Court of Human Rights or to other treaty bodies. However, these bodies only make states accountable for human rights violations, not the individual high-ranking official who actually make the crimes. When a sentenced state does not follow up with investigations of individual perpetrators, the impunity problem remains. Thirdly, you can file very serious cases under universal jurisdiction in Norway and several other countries. However, there are many limitations and obstacles to succeed in such cases. So in the end, we realized that targeted sanctions should be a new tool in order to address the impunity problem. It's one of the more realistic avenues to strengthen protection of human rights defenders. Of course, we know that broader sanction regimes often cause harm to the wrong people, but we are talking about individualized sanctions. They do not create economic hardship for ordinary people and focus instead on individual accountability of persons who are found to be directly responsible for gross violations of human rights. There is also another important argument. The inflow of criminal money to democratic countries is enormous. In the Nordic countries these days, we are in the process of understanding the extent of money laundering that has been facilitated by some of our biggest banks, like Danske Bank, Nordea, and Swedbank, including laundering money from the tax fraud that Magnitsky exposed. By doing nothing, by allowing corrupt officials and human rights violators to enter our countries, allowing them to make use of our banks and financial institutions and instruments, we are in fact aiding and abetting their criminal actions, or helping them to enjoy the proceeds of their crimes. In words reminiscent of expressions by British Prime Minister Theresa May, these people should not be welcome in our countries. I think it's worth studying the Council of Parliamentary Assembly resolutions adopted last month, because it includes very important provisions on human rights safeguards in sanctions regimes. That's very important for us. Those people with sanctions should have a chance to challenge the sanctions before a court, and there should be transparency around the whole procedure of sanctions. I think it's also very important that human rights organizations have the possibility to present evidence and cases. So, in conclusion, we challenge the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly to debate and enact a new resolution on the need for national parliaments to consider passing Magnitsky laws. The resolution could point to the need for fighting impunity in the context of the OSCE Comprehensive Security Council. We believe that high-level corruption, human rights violations, impunity is undermining security within countries, but also cross-border. I believe this to be one of the defining issues of our time, which we urgently need to resolve. Global Magnitsky sanctions are not directed against any state. They are excellent tools to fight impunity anywhere, and by doing that, they increase protection of human rights. For those courageous activists that promote respect for human rights for all and expose serious wrongdoing by officials.
Thank you very much, Gunnar. Before I open up for questions, comments from you, I would like to raise two questions to the panel. I'm probably starting with Vladimir. Firstly, do we have indications that Magnitsky sanctions are effective in fighting impunity? Can they prevent human rights violations from taking place? Second, given the fact that so far Russian citizens have most frequently been subject to sanctions, do we know anything about how ordinary Russian people react to this? Are sanctions by the US, Canada, UK or the Baltic countries perceived as anti-Russian? Or do people appreciate that the sanctions are not directed against Russia or Russians, but against individual wrongdoers? Will you be willing to make a comment on that?
Absolutely.
Thank you. While you are making your comments, please indicate to me who would like to ask questions and so on, and I will carefully locate them. Please.
Well, thank you so much. Two very, very important questions. I'll start with the second one, if I may. And I can actually give you a very precise answer to this because the same month the Magnitsky bill was passed into law in the United States, that is in December of 2012, there was a poll conducted by the Levada Center, which is the last more or less independent voting agency in Russia, which showed that a strong plurality of Russian citizens approved of the idea of preventing those government officials, Russian government officials, who engage in corruption, human rights abuse, from freely traveling to the West, growing assets in the West, and so on and so forth. Because the absolute brilliance of the Magnitsky legislation, the groundbreaking and the revolutionary nature of that legislation is what Gunnar has just said. These are not sanctions against the country. These are not even sanctions against the government of the country, per se. These sanctions have an individual nature. The whole point to them is accountability, the principle of personal accountability, that those people who get away with these acts of abuse and corruption for now in their home countries will at least be held to account internationally. And the revolutionarity of this principle is that, that the people that are held accountable by these sanctions are actually the people who deserve to be held accountable, who are responsible for those violations themselves on a very personal basis. And so, to answer your second question, no, despite the best efforts of the Kremlin propaganda machine, Russian citizens, or at least a very large part of Russian citizens, do not view those sanctions as anti-Russian. In fact, if you look at some of the most active proponents of the Magnitsky legislation, some of the most active participants in this global campaign for accountability and justice in shaping the Magnitsky legislation, they have mostly been Russians themselves. I mentioned Boris Nemtsov, but many others too who played a very important role in this. And to your first question now about the effectiveness and assessing the effectiveness of these laws, well, I think frankly that the most reliable source on this would be Vladimir Putin's government itself. And there has been literally nothing which they've been more desperate to stop over the last more than 6 years than the Magnitsky Act, since it was first made law in the US. In fact, before it became law in the US, in May of 2012, while the Magnitsky legislation was still making its way through the US Congress, Vladimir Putin signed a decree outlining the major tasks for his foreign ministry, and among the top priority tasks for the Russian foreign ministry was to stop the Magnitsky legislation from being passed in the United States. As we know, that task failed, but after the Magnitsky Act became law, the Kremlin has been absolutely relentless. It's trying to do all it can to stop it, to weaken it, to undermine it. Of course, the first thing they did, right in that winter of 2012-2013, was the Kremlin responded to the Magnitsky Act in the US by enacting a blanket ban on adoptions by American citizens of Russian orphan children. Dozens of families who had already met their children had their processes stopped midway. Some of those children who were already slated to go to their adoptive families in the US have since died in Russian orphanages for horrendous conditions, and their names are known. It was dubbed Herod's Law, King Herod's Law. And when it was passed, Boris Nemtsov led a march of tens of thousands of people through the streets of Moscow in protest against that law. And a colleague of mine, Marina Panushkin, who is a very prominent columnist, journalist in Russia, said at the time that he knows of only 2 organizations in the world that target their own children, use their own children as human shield to attack their opponents. One such organization is Hamas, and the other one is United Russia Party, led by Vladimir Putin. Frankly, I have nothing to add to that statement. But since then, as we know, the Kremlin has been trying again and again and again. And if you look, for example, just last summer, the Helsinki summit between President Trump and Vladimir Putin in the capital of Finland, everything that Putin was talking about was basically the Magnitsky Act. He was trying to get the US government to agree to let his security services question the people who were involved in the passage of the Magnitsky Act. Again, including Kyle Parker, who's sitting with us in this room. He was specifically named by the Russian Prosecutor General's office as wanted for questioning for the supposed crime of helping to co-author the Magnitsky legislation. I think, frankly, there's no clear answer about the effectiveness of these sanctions and the desperation with which the Putin regime has been trying to get rid of it. And I have even mentioned the fact that so many Russian citizens who have been involved in the campaign for the Magnitsky legislation have faced very real consequences for that activity. And I'm very happy and certainly very grateful to be sitting here with you this afternoon. That's one of the poisoned on 2 occasions in the last 4 years, both times nearly to death, and I have no doubt that the reason for both of those incidents was my ongoing experience in the US. So I think we should take incredible speech on that. It's the most effective thing there is.
Thank you very much. Short comments also from my other 2 colleagues here, starting with you and then Gunnar.
Thank you. Answering the question about the effectiveness of the sanctions, Mr. President has said many sharp and accurate points. I totally agree that the reaction and the desperation shows that they are painful and that they are effective. And I truly believe that the more countries will pass the Magnitsky Act, the more countries will be united fighting the impunity, I believe the more effective it will be.
Yes, I agree with my 2 previous speakers. They are effective. We are not naive. We don't think they will solve all the problems, of course, but they are a very important part of the tools we should use. We know from testimonies also of lower ranking officials that they are very concerned about sanctions lists. But as was said, we need more countries to adopt such sanctions. That's why we are here. We want to challenge you to bring this debate onto your parliaments so that sanctions become a part of wider efforts to increase protection in the fight against impunity. I'm absolutely sure if there is EU sanctions and if the countries work together to develop sanctions against some of the same persons, that will work.
Thank you. We move on to you. I have noted down 3 of you that indicate an interest to make comment or ask questions, starting with Emin down there, and then I have that gentleman and that gentleman on my list. But there is still time for more questions.
Thanks. My name is Emin Huseinov. I'm originally from Azerbaijan, but currently based in political exile in Switzerland. And thanks for all speakers for very good remarks about sanctions. But I want to say for that sanctions, which is Western government started to implement against, for example, Russia, that's not enough for people, and especially for countries like Azerbaijan. Yes, all world speak about sanctions against Putin regime, but still nothing on the floor about the sanctions against Ali, which is one of the strongest kleptocrats in the world. And today I have a questions to members of states, especially from Baltic state and from Scandinavian states. For you speak about the sanctions, but I have a questions as like civil society and citizens, which is from a rich oil country with poor people, which is don't have incomes from his oil and gas. Our ruling regime stolen money and launders this money via Danske Bank, which is thanks for your recovery. Danske Bank, which is laundered from Azerbaijan 3 billion, they make a profit 150 million euros for 2 years. Why is this international and like national business institution like Danske Bank, Sweden Bank don't return these stolen assets or even profit back to Azerbaijani or Russian people? There is maybe it's time to think about how to establish the framework together with international civil society community, returning these stolen assets, not only freezing this money on the bank accounts like UK right now make it or any other state, but just to think to return this money to supporting programs which is oriented to promoting democracy and human rights, especially in countries like in Azerbaijan, when civil society right now staying alone, Western community, Baltic states, Scandinavian state governments don't support it as before 2014 because they say for you don't have legal environment for this. And now we are working with Danske Bank, and now we want your solidarity. And also my question to Vladimir, why they are not fight with Danske Bank to name them, you should return the stolen assets as like clear profit back to Russian people. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Would you be able to make a comment on that?
Absolutely. Thank you very much for the intervention. In fact, last June, I think it was, yes, at the beginning of June, Bill Brown and I were in Copenhagen, in Denmark, to testify at the Danish Parliament's Foreign Affairs Committee on their version of the Magnitsky legislation, which we hope will now make speedy passage through the Parliament. But also, after that hearing, we held several meetings with journalists of leading newspapers in Copenhagen to discuss the Danske Bank scandal that you referred to. And it's the largest corruption scandal in the history of Denmark, and so they're certainly paying attention to it. And I think what we have seen in the last few months in terms of the media stories and the investigations is only the beginning. There's going to be much, much more to come out. And I think the last point you raised is very important too, because after all, the money that these kleptocrats are stealing are money that should belong to their own people. It's the same with the Putin regime in Russia, it's the same with the Aliyev regime in Azerbaijan, the same in so many other countries, unfortunately, including several OECD member states, where the people who are in charge of their authoritarian regimes, stealing from their own citizens and then stashing that money in Western jurisdictions. We all remember the Panama Papers story from 3 years ago, almost 2 years ago, and there's a Danske Bank story unraveling. So I think it's a very important point to make that this money should eventually be returned back. And not back to the kleptocrats who are stealing them, but back to the people from whom this money was stolen. And I think one of the most important tasks, we'll presume to speak for another country, we speak for Azerbaijan, I think, speaking for Russia, I think it will be one of the most important tasks of a democratic post-Putin government in Russia to recover and return all those stolen assets that have been taken away by these Kremlin oligarchs and stashed in Western jurisdictions. Return them back to the country, give them back to the society, to the budget, to the citizens, and I hope that we should be able and will be able to count on help and cooperation both from Western governments but also from Western financial institutions as we will be undertaking that task.
Please, sir.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Andriy Chesnokov. I'm from Ukraine. Sorry, delegation to the OEC, but I will be the capacity of interpreter of short intervention of the member of Ukrainian Parliament and head of the Majlis of Crimean Tatar people of Achimov.
Дякую. Я хочу висловити вдячність доповідачам і пані Руті, і пану Володимиру, і пану Гунару, і, звичайно, Норвезькому греческому комітетові.
Thank you so much. I would like to thank the panelists and Ms. Milute, Mr. Karamuza, and Mr. Ekiloves Lidal, and also the Norwegian Helsinki Committee.
Гунар сказав, що нарушуються репресії проти правозахисників Росії. Я хотів би замітити, що в окупованому Криму правозахисники, адвокати є об'єктом переслідувань з боку окупаційної влади.
Gunnar, in your statement, you paid attention on the rise of the repressions against the human rights defenders in Russia, but I would like to pay your attention that in the Russia-occupied Crimea, the lawyers is a specific, human rights defenders is a specific category under the attack.
Буквально годину тому в Симферополі завершилося засідання колегії адвокатів в окупованому Симферополі, де вони намагалися виключити за вимогою Мін'юста Росії адвоката Еміля Курбедінова, дуже відомого адвоката Криму.
Just one hour ago, the Bar Association of Crimea tried, under the request of the Ministry of Justice of the Russian Federation, to seize the license of lawyer Emil Kurbedinov, who is a very active human rights defender in Crimea.
Тепер щодо репресій, щодо санкцій. Ми впевнені в Україні, що будь-які санкції вони не приведуть до лібералізації режиму політичного Росії, оскільки поки зберігається війна проти України, поки Росія утримуватиме окупований Крим, в Росії завжди будуть потреби, у влади будуть потреби для того весь час пожорчувати репресії проти свого населення.
Speaking about the sanctions, I would like to say that we in Ukraine believe that just sanctions against Russia will not provide for liberalization of the situation in this country because it's in the process of the aggression against Ukraine. And being at war with Ukraine, will be always a need for tightening repressions inside of Russia, and there will be no special attention to sanctions.
Отже, питання, пане Володимире, пане Гуннаре, пані Руті, чи можливо доцільно взятися за глобальні санкції, щоб змусити Росію повернутися в межі міжнародного права, піти з України, звільнити Крим? І можливо це є спасіння Росії, і це є спасіння людей, це захист прав людини. Я хотів би, щоб ви відповіли на це питання. Дуже дякую.
So, as a question to the panelists, maybe we should join our efforts for the not national but global sanctions against Russia to make Russia to stop aggression against Ukraine, to free Crimea, and maybe this will be the salvation for Russia and the Russian people. Thank you.
I guess that I will open up for 2 more comments and then have a final comments from the panelists. That is okay with all of you. I have you in mind.
Roger Wicker from the United States. So let me encourage those of you who have not done so to get Bill Browder's book, Red Notice. It's a very comprehensive and very interesting, easy read, and explains a lot about this. Sergei Magnitsky did not set out to be a hero. He was a modest accountant and set out to be a good citizen by discovering massive fraud and brought it to the attention of the Russian authorities. It turns out he was bringing it to the attention of the very people who were involved in the fraud. And he couldn't believe this was happening. He had an opportunity to leave his country, but chose not to do so. He wanted to remain a Russian. And to his surprise and dismay, he was jailed and beaten and killed for setting out to be a good citizen. My specific question to you, Vladimir, is with regard to the naming of the specific sanctioned individuals. I'm sure there's a frustration on your part about decisions with the American State Department and other agencies in the other countries as to who in particular is placed on the sanction list. And if you could inform the members here about the status of that question.
Thank you very much. The last speaker from the audience on my list will then be Antonio Stampo. Please.
So thank you very much for organizing this event. I'm speaking on behalf of the Italian Federation for Human Rights, that is the Italian Helsinki Committee. And I want to say that we are going to push for Magnitsky legislation in Italy as well as in other countries. I did some meetings so far as to Australia a few months ago, speaking with the federal parliament of the country, because I believe that the most countries will adopt this legislation, stronger will be the effort that they are going to make. So I have a very specific question. We believe, I think most of us believe that this legislation should keep the name Magnitsky, because it's very powerful, as a very strong meaning for all that we know. However, at the European Union and some other states, they are trying to have a similar legislation, but avoiding to mention the name Magnitsky. Do you share my opinion that it's important to keep it?
Thank you very much. Then I invite all three. I thought I would start with you.
Thank you, Johan. So all three very important questions. I want to start with Senator Wood's question about the specific individuals who are or should be sanctioned under the Magnitsky Authority. So usually the tradition that we've had for the last almost 7 years is that the Russian-specific Magnitsky Act designations usually came out in December. So this past December was the first December where no Russian-specific Magnitsky designations came up in the US. Now, I've had several meetings within the US administration in the last few weeks, and from what I understand, they are actually working on that. So that process continues. But I think, given the past experience as well, it could be really helpful and really powerful to have some congressional prodding with regards to Magnitsky designations. I mentioned some of those egregious human rights violators that have already been sanctioned, and two of them specifically, General Alexander Bastrykin, head of the investigative committee, and Ramzan Kadyrov, the current appointed head of Chechnya. They were both pushed to be added to the Magnitsky Act sanctions by members of Congress, the members from the Senate and the House, going to the administration, doing public letters, urging, requesting them to place those people on the sanctions list. And after a while, so it took 4 years to sanction Bastrykin. Between the moment the Magnitsky Act became law and the moment of his sanctioning in January 2017. And I think that one episode also shows what a high standard is built into the Magnitsky legislation in the US. Because if it took 4 years to sanction a top government official who personally threatened to kill a journalist, and then admitted it, so it's not a question of proof. If it takes 4 years to sanction somebody like this, if it takes 5 years to openly sanction Ramzan Kadyrov, who's, what's going on in Chechnya is a black hole, even by general standards in Russia. They have daily tortures, killings, disappearances. It's something out of a different world. It took 5 years to get on the open Magnitsky list. So I think it shows what a difficult process there is, and I think it could really benefit, this process could really benefit from some attention from Capitol Hill, because we know it helped greatly in the past. The last time Boris Nemtsov came to Washington in January of 2014, when we met with you, when we met with Senator McCain, Congresswoman Maslany over in the House, and many others, Senator Cardin, the main message was that congressional prodding is very much needed, and the result of that meeting was in fact a letter on the stricken that resulted in his designation of the Magnitsky Authority in 2017. Boris Nemtsov didn't live to see that day, but I know he would have been proud that that actually did happen at the end. And of course, one other area that I think deserves special attention in terms of the Magnitsky designations is the people who have been involved in, who were involved in the assassination of Boris Nemtsov himself. Because, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, so far, Lithuania is the only country that actually sanctioned those people. And most of them are known. It's not a question of the lack of information. It's only a question of the lack of political will on the part of the Russian government to do anything about it. These people are well known. To such an extent that we know that even, from newspaper reports in Russia, that even Russian investigators wanted on 2 occasions to indict an individual close to Ramzan Kadyrov. His name is Major Ruslan Geremeyev. He's a major in the Russian interior ministry and internal forces of the Russian Federation, whom Russian investigators on 2 occasions wanted to indict as an organizer in the assassination of Boris Nemtsov. On both of those occasions, they had been prevented from doing so by General Strikin himself. This came from high up. So this individual, for example, is sanctioned by Lithuania, but is not yet sanctioned by the United States. So I think that's a big glowing area that's missing so far. And I think it would send a really powerful message to sanction some of those individuals involved in the case of Boris Nemtsov. And I think the fact that the President of the Assembly today announced the appointment of a special rapporteur here at the OSCE that came in such a large part thanks to your efforts and the efforts of your colleagues in the US delegation is also a very important step towards justice and accountability. I want to take this opportunity also to recognize Vadim Prokhorov, who is here with us, who has been an attorney representing the family of Boris Nemtsov for these past 4 years, and on both of the investigative stage and the trial stage, and that he's been involved very actively in helping with the reporting process in the Council of Europe, and he will continue to be actively involved here at the OSCE as well. Thank you very much for being here. There was a very recent case we spoke about repressions, and Gunnar specifically spoke about repressions against human rights defenders. 2 weeks ago, one of my colleagues from the Open Russia movement, Anastasia Shevchenko from the city of Rostov-on-Don, it's a city in the south of Russia, not far from the Ukrainian border, she became the first person in Russia to be arrested and criminally charged under a new article in the criminal code that punishes any activity on behalf of a quote-unquote undesirable organization. It's Article 284.1 of the Russian criminal code, added 4 years ago by Putin. She is the first person to be charged with a criminal offense under it. She's facing 6 years in prison. While she was under house arrest, a special needs child in a state care facility died of an illness at the age of 17. And she was only allowed to literally go and say goodbye. She wasn't allowed to spend those last few days by her daughter's side to care for her. Again, this is mind-boggling even by the standards that we see in Russia today. And so, and now after burying her daughter, she faces 6 years in prison, literally just for belonging to an opposition group. That's important. They're not making pretenses anymore. They used to put political opponents in prison, for quote-unquote tax evasion or fraud or something like this. They don't bother anymore. They're going to put somebody in prison literally just for belonging to an opposition group. That is official crime in Russia today. And so I think, for example, the people who have been involved in her case, the prosecutors and the judges, are very eligible candidates for Magnitsky designations as well. And there are many, many other such cases. And I think the most important aspect of this is to have those designations public. Because it has been reported in the US media, I'm going to phrase it accurately, it's been reported in the US media that Ramzan Kadyrov has been on the Magnitsky designations from the very beginning, but he was in the classified section. And he didn't have nearly the power it should have if he had been put on the open list, and he has been put on the open list by the current administration at the end of 2017, which was an enormously important step. But there is so much scope still left. Some of those high-profile human rights abusers can still have to be sanctioned. I mentioned the fact that the son of the Prosecutor General of Russia, Artyom Chaika, has been sanctioned under the Global Magnitsky Authority. Well, the Prosecutor General himself hasn't. And I've heard from a few people I spoke to in Washington that the reason that he's party is because the US government is not hoping to cooperate on the law enforcement scale. Well, I don't know how much cooperation can be basically with a criminal group that sees power in Russia today. Chaika has been involved in numerous instances of corruption, obviously, but also politically motivated prosecutions. He's a very eligible candidate for Magnitsky designation. He hasn't been designated yet. And I'm sorry I'm going too long with this, but there are so many people who deserve to be designated. And I know it's hard work, and I know it's a very high legal standard that needs to be met. But I think congressional attention is the key to all of this, so we'll be very grateful if those signals, including the signals as to the designation of people involved in the assassination of Boris Nemtsov, will be sent from your side of Pennsylvania to the other side. I think that will be very crucial as this process goes along. Very quickly to your question, yes, I think absolutely you are right. I think Sergei Magnitsky has become a symbol for this whole process. His name has power on its own, and it's very meaningful when we speak about these things. So absolutely, I think his name should be kept on the European Union-wide Magnitsky sanctions regime, targeted human rights sanctions regime. Reflection on our observation, thank you so much for being with us, and thank you for your question. As you know, many people have already been designated, at least in the US and now in Canada as well, for their involvement with the aggression against Ukraine, the Kremlin's aggression against Ukraine. I think it's very important to be accurate and careful with the wording. I'm a Russian citizen. I do not advocate sanctions on Russia. I don't want sanctions on my country. I advocate and work for sanctions and will continue to work for sanctions on specific individuals who are involved in corruption, who are involved in human rights abuse, who are involved in torture, election fraud, and yes, who are involved in violations of international law on the part of the current government of the Russian Federation. And as you know, several people who have been involved in aggression, in Kremlin's aggression in Ukraine, have been specifically sanctioned by the United States because now, as well as the Magnitsky Law, there are several other legal provisions, including specifically Ukraine-related provisions that allow those individuals to be sanctioned. One of those, I'm wrapping up. One of those examples is Dmitry Rogozin. So recently, he was Deputy Prime Minister of Russia, now he's the head of Roscosmos, the state space agency. He has been on the US sanctions list specifically for his involvement in the annexation of Crimea and his aggression against Ukraine in 2014. Since 2014, he's been on the sanctions. At the end of last year, he was invited by the head of NASA, the US Space Agency, to come to the US and deliver a lecture at Rice University in Houston, Texas. And I'm very happy and very proud to say that with the help of many friends of the United States Congress on both sides of the aisle, there was such indignation expressed at the fact that he was supposed to be given a sanctions waiver. He, of course, I don't need to tell you who Rogozin is. He's a notorious far-right nationalist with a long history of completely horrendous views. He's an anti-Semite, but he's also somebody who is essential, very central to Putin's regime at the moment in all its foreign policies. And so, with the help of our friends in Congress on both sides of the aisle, in both chambers of the US Congress, such indignation was raised, but the head of NASA rescinded the invitation. The White House gave up this idea of granting a visa waiver to this individual. And I think actually it shows, again, first how important Congress is in all of these processes. But secondly, the public opinion really matters. And I think it's really important that we do continue to count on our friends, both in the rest of Europe and in North America, to make sure that those individual sanctions provisions are not only legislated and implemented, but then also maintained and adhered to. Because I understand there could be potentially some national security reasons to issue sanctions waivers to some individuals in some rare cases. I don't think inviting a notorious Russian fascist to lecture at Rice University in Houston, Texas constitutes reasonable grounds for such action. So I'm deeply grateful to all of those in the United States who helped stop that, and I hope that this level of attention continues, and I hope this process continues to move on as well.
Thank you very much. We have just a little time left, so short comments from my two colleagues here before I conclude.
In our concept of a human rights defender, we include human rights lawyers. And you're absolutely right, in many situations, human rights lawyers trying to defend people from in criminal prosecutions, often very politically motivated, they end up being imprisoned themselves. We have seen that in overseas participating states, in different states, including Tajikistan, which has very bad record in that regard. I think you also have seen that in Turkey. You're right, there should be a lot more support to civil society organizations. Sanctions is a tool, but it will not solve everything, of course. And it's a shame that civil society in Azerbaijan, in Turkey, in many other countries are very short of resources. So that's a challenge which democratic countries should the strength of the US Magnitsky sanction regime, as we see it, is that it's open for different actors to present cases, to come up with evidence. There is a coalition of NGOs working to present cases, and that is working fairly well. So that's a challenge, I think, with the Canadian and the other sanctions regimes. It's more difficult for us to see how we can provide cases, because that's something we really want to do. I agree with Antonio Stanko that we should keep the name Magnitsky. It has to become a symbol. It's a very strong symbol of an ordinary citizen who depended on the law and who was killed because of that. So we should keep it. Thank you.
Thank you. As it was said before, the more countries will adapt the Magnitsky law, the more effective it will be. I'm not sure if you understood that Italy is planning to adapt the law as well, but the reactions have shown that they are effective. And not only to fight the impunity, to increase pressure on countries where level of impunity is very high, but also it should work as a deterrence tool. And it should not limit foreigners related to the crimes to get a Western visa, but it should also freeze the assets in Western banks and stop from carrying out economic activities in this way to avoid the money laundering, which was spoken about earlier as well. So since there is so little time, I just want to share the last thought that I believe it is important to impose the sanctions not to a particular country, but talk about the universal provisions and move forward to a global human sanctions regime, but definitely keep the name of Magnitsky, which started this important law.
Thank you very much, and let me then end by expressing my gratitude to the two people in the panel, Vladimir Musa, Gunnar Ekeberg, and Luta Miluta. And I would also like to express my gratitude to our host, Osman Andrews, the Norwegian parliamentarian and member of the Parliamentary Assembly here. I do hope that we have been able to inspire some of you, hopefully all of you, to continue to work in order to promote the issue of targeted sanctions within the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly and hopefully also within your own national parliaments. The Norwegian Helsinki Committee will certainly continue our work in doing the same within Norway, but also at an international level. Thank you, everyone, for taking part in this meeting. Before you leave, let me also just ask you to pay attention to a little leaflet which is left behind there in the room. That is dealing with something completely different, but another aspect of the work of the Norwegian Helsinki Committee. This is the International Panel of Parliamentarians for Freedom of Religion or Belief. We are engaged in that work and are trying to reach out to more interested parliamentarians internationally. So, if you are interested, please bring that with you. Thank you all very much.